So it was Buster's 127th birthday on the 4th of October, and because people liked my first Buster film, I've made another one, a much better one. I'm not sick this time. And we start with The Navigator. Here we have the most successful film, and Rollo Treadway and Betsy O'Brien are both millionaires who've never had to do anything, and this attempt at providing themselves with food in the empty Navigator is just hilarious. They make coffee with salt water and have a hell of a time with eggs and cans and everything else. It escalates. He never makes fun of people who are less powerful. A millionaire is powerful, so we can make fun of him. So nothing says fish out of water like a millionaire forced by his father to go camping to toughen him up, which is the fate of Alfred Butler. In this film from 1925, which he actually bought from a stage play himself because he liked the story. This is another one of his millionaires. The millionaires come via the performance in The Saphead, which is not really a film that you would watch independent of the fact that it has Buster in. But if you're a Buster fan and want to know where people like Alfred Butler and Rollo Treadway come from, go watch The Saphead. There's a new restored version out. It's worth seeing. Parody is highly effective in writing comedy. The one problem is that depending on what you are parodying or satirizing depends on how well it will date. Now, this is from the Frozen North, and one of the things that makes this one a little bit inaccessible is you need to actually read a bit about who he's parodying. The hat and the strap underneath, and actually the man that he's just put into the window is William S. Hart, cowboy actor, but he didn't take kindly to being lampooned, and apparently, according to Buster, didn't speak to him for 2 years. The other person that he lampoons in this is Erich von Stroheim, who you would know if you've seen Sunset Boulevard as the butler. Apparently he also played villains, so seeing Buster as a would-be rapist and thief, a little bit odd, until you work out it's a parody. We're still with the Frozen North, and this time we are playing against type, and Buster is always hardworking and reasonable and honest, and here he is a thug who will pick up his unconscious wife and dance her around the room to avoid the cops and then drop her. It's very jarring and funny, but jarring. Possibly the most famous sequence in the whole of Seven Chances, which is not a great film. I'd put it right down the bottom of my choice films. But this bit started when audiences noticed he dislodged some rocks, and that was funny. So if some rocks was funny, more rocks must be funnier. Basically, this whole sequence was put in to salvage a project that he wasn't terribly enthusiastic about. one of the most unique things about Buster's films is his use of the surreal. Much more used in the shorts, but you see it turning up in Sherlock Jr., and you see it turning up in The Navigator with this underwater sequence, which he refilmed 3 times until he got it right. This was filmed first in a pool that didn't work, and then elsewhere that didn't work, and finally at the bottom of Lake Tahoe, which was absolutely freezing. And he could only be down there for about 20 minutes before he got too cold. But it's just so good. It's so good in its absurdity. Definitely the most highly regarded, but also one of the darkest of the comedies is The General. And you can see how Buster manages to weigh dark and light together with his use of comedy to undercut the seriousness of the moment. So he twirls his gun like a cowboy. He's not a soldier, so he doesn't really know how to use firearms, which we will see, undercutting this really serious moment of the surrender of this northern general. A great way to create comedy is to juxtapose 2 completely incompatible things together, which is what Buster does in his second feature, Our Hospitality, which is really his first real feature, because 3 Ages is 3 two-reelers glued together that he could have hacked apart if he needed to. But in Our Hospitality, we bring the Southern blood feud and Southern hospitality together. So William McKay, Buster, is safe inside the Canfield house, but the moment he steps out, he'll be shot by the father and the brothers. And you can see this as a tradition of that you play a song that's sort of like, it's time to leave, but William McKay has decided he's going to make himself a permanent resident, if he can, in their house so that he's safe. Another great way to write comedy is, especially if you've got something big that you want to happen in the end, this is not just comedy, but everything, is set it up ahead of time. Put something innocuous into your story that works as in its context, but then has additional meaning by the end of the work. So in this one, he's let the bulls out, and the other cowboys are joking and say, yeah, just wave something red at them. Wave something red at the bulls. And to their surprise, it works. Especially as he's completely incapable of getting the bulls in their way. So he gets them in, and then he has problems at the end of the film moving cattle, when he's got to move them from the train to the stockyards through the streets of Pasadena. And you'll see him using a familiar method to get those cows moving. This is from college, having just rescued the girl off to be married, and possibly one of the bitterest endings, other than Cops, and really the general, that you can find in a Buster Keaton film. Very interesting choice. One of the things that struck me when I started watching Buster Keaton movies was what strong, competent, masculine characters he plays. Most comedians are all insecure bags of neuroticism. Not Buster. Buster is very positive masculinity. Have you ever wondered what the difference between a nice guy and a good man is? Well, we see that in college when needing rescue, having her boyfriend having been kicked out of college and now locked her in her room with him in the hope of getting her kicked out of college, the great love interest, I'm not sure if she has a name, goes and rings Ronald, who has been trying out for sport in the hope of getting her attention, and now, able finally to see what a good guy Ronald is, she calls him knowing he will come and rescue her. He will save her from this guy who is not a good guy at all. This is from Go West, and the card scene. The card scene didn't get the laughs that Buster was hoping, but it was integral to the plot, so it had to stay in because it wouldn't quite work. But it's a wonderful piece that shows just what sort of integrity he has. He's called out the other cowboy. These men are much bigger than him. And he's also been told smile. But he doesn't smile. He does not smile. He's not doing something just because someone tells him to. He has integrity. He has himself. It's also a brilliant example of think slow, act fast, which is very important to Buster's persona. Buster's characters are always very self-possessed. They always are quite happy to be who they are. It doesn't matter if the other men are bigger than them, if the situation is ridiculous, they will always have a level of confidence that just comes from within. As you've no doubt gathered, this is not male power fantasy in terms of masculinity. This is a very, very powerful and yet very appealing masculinity. It's a masculinity that allows for vulnerability, and that's what we see here. I read an essay that said that women weren't so terribly interested in the silent clowns like Buster, and I honestly want to dispute with that woman, what were you watching? Because this masculinity is extremely sexy. In spite of never having boxed in his life, Alfred Butler is now having to train to fight the Alabama murderer in the place of the battling butler. Not something he would have done voluntarily, but his wife thinks he's the battling butler, and he's just got to keep going, despite the fact that he so doesn't want to. Buster never asked for your sympathy, but in this from the general, you cannot help but give it to him. You would have to have a heart of stone not to give him sympathy for this. His girlfriend will not accept his explanation for why he hasn't signed up, and she dumps him. And he takes that. He's not happy. There is no way this man is happy. But Johnny Grey doesn't do anything to Annabelle. It's her choice, and he accepts that. He doesn't like it, but he accepts it. What do you do when the family wants to kill you? Well, you become part of the family in this Southern Romeo and Juliet. It's one of the great endings. And between marrying the girl and unloading the gun cabinet, we see his resourcefulness very, very clearly. Buster breaks the rules of slapstick by showing fear, exhaustion, discomfort, and he knows when he's got in over his head, and he is most definitely in over his head in the battling butler. There's the Alabama murderer there, knocking out his own trainer. He knows when it's time to call it quits. This end to the battling butler is one that Buster added himself. The play ends with Alfred Butler not having to fight anyone, with the battling butler fighting his fight. But in this one, the battling butler is a sadistic bully who, having humiliated Alfred Butler, now wants to, belt 7 bells out of him. Alfred doesn't fight back. It's not him. He's not that person until the battling butler hurts Martin. Martin is his valet. He is devoted, and when the battling butler hurts Martin, that's it. All bets are off. Alfred may be reluctant to defend himself, but Martin, his wife, oh yeah, he's going to do that. He also learns when he does something wrong. He knows, gosh, what on earth did I do? What came over me? And then it's time to confess to the wife that he's not who he thinks he is, and to, much like Johnny Gray, just accept the consequences. Because that's what a man does. Finally, last but not least, he's brave. Seriously brave. There's a moment in the making of The Railroader where Buster is complaining because the director thought a gag would be too dangerous. And if anyone other than Buster said, "I've done things 100 times more dangerous than that," he was fuming, which is quite funny to see Buster fume because he's not a He's not that kind of a person. You would think that they were boasting, but no, he has done things about 100 times more dangerous. He got his way in the end. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.